So now that Ajit Pai has successfully eliminated net neutrality, ISPs are now looking forward to slowly introducing things like data caps and throttling connections and putting in paid prioritization lanes. That's not going to happen all at once, obviously, but those are a lot of the things that net neutrality activists, proponents, have been warning against. A complete and total takeover, eventual takeover of the internet's transmission lines that were publicly created, by the way. We paid for that, by private corporations. Again, they've been wanting to take control of this so they could do these things without FCC interference, which is what they had tried to do before, but had been stopped. And there are a lot of different cases of these companies trying to do these things that will actually end up hurting consumers and actually tries to shift people towards their own products and their own services, but we're stopped by the FCC. Now, what's funny about this is that conservatives, well, they're happy about it. There's a certain number of conservatives, at least, that are incredibly happy about it. Now they believe, oh, finally, the internet is free. Ajit Pai has reversed President Obama's unconstitutional internet power grab. Now, that's, of course, is an absurd argument. As I pointed out before, net neutrality rules were only put into place to preserve what the internet has traditionally always been: free and fair and open. The whole idea that Pai's rollback of these rules heralds a return to the good old days of the internet, where we first started before Obama's takeover in 2015, is, again, it's just false. And that's not just me saying this, that's the FCC. That is even a Republican-led investigation into the FCC. Again, there is no bottom to that Republican barrel. They will investigate, or at least they'll investigate a political rival for almost anything. Amazing. Now, I'm going to get into the story because this is interesting. According to internal FCC documents obtained by Motherboard through a Freedom of Information Act request, the independent, nonpartisan FCC Office of Inspector General, acting on orders from congressional Republicans, investigated the claim that President Obama had allegedly interfered with the FCC's net neutrality process, and what they found? They found it was nonsense. I love it. Now, this Republican narrative of net neutrality as an Obama-led takeover of the internet then had been wholly refuted by an independent investigation. However, its findings were not made public prior to the vote to repeal net neutrality. Now, that's very important because, again, this narrative was allowed to fester for all this time, which I don't think had a huge effect on public opinion, to be honest with you. And I believe Pai was going to do this anyway. But nonetheless, they withheld this information because it basically, went against a Republican narrative. Now, the FCC, it is important to note that it is not beholden to the White House. They're actually a very independent agency. Now, it is inherently political because presidents have to appoint people to fill as commissioners. And right now, we have 2 Democrats and 3 Republican commissioners, including Ajit Pai, who was an Obama appointee. I know I keep seeing this narrative everywhere. Well, President Obama appointed Ajit Pai. Yes, because he had to. He had to put a Republican in that seat, and Republicans are all against net neutrality. But again, according to the rules, he had no choice. So that's sad. However, President Obama did also appoint Tom Wheeler to be the commissioner. Now, I remember because I was there, I was telling Tom Wheeler, do not eliminate net neutrality. So I remember that entire fight back in 2015 where we actually thought that we won. Turns out we did not win. It was just a temporary victory. However, that does give me hope that anything that this administration does, a future administration could fix. So at least there's some hope on that. We just might have to wait for a while. But anyway, this talking point that President Obama was using these net neutrality rules to take over the internet, where did that actually come from? Well, back in 2014, President Obama released a statement saying that he believed the FCC should create rules protecting net neutrality, but noted, of course, that ultimately the decision is theirs alone. Basically saying, hey, man, look, I would like net neutrality. Most Democrats, and actually most Americans, would like net neutrality rules. And the polls are very, very clear. An enormous majority of the American people wanted to keep net neutrality rules. So President Obama wasn't necessarily politically risky, wasn't really divisive. President Obama was simply echoing the will of the American people. Net neutrality. We actually care about that. We actually agree with that. So over at the FCC, you can do whatever you want, but I think you should do net neutrality. Now, of course, those on the right took this statement predictably and said, oh my God, here's the White House. You are going to force the FCC to do net neutrality on us. How dare you? If Obama did it, it must be bad. They ironically typed into their Twitter machines. Again, using the internet, ironically, to destroy the internet. But anyway, now, in early December of 2014, the FCC, led by, at the time, Tom Wheeler, announced it would delay tackling net neutrality until 2015. Now, conservatives also took this delay and basically said it was Obama's fault. He's meddling, and they pointed to a Wall Street Journal article saying that there were unusual secretive efforts inside the White House, led by two aides, that led to the FCC adopting these regulations. Now, it's important to note that you really can't trust the Wall Street Journal. It is it is a Rupert Murdoch publication, so it's very pro-conservative, very pro-corporation. Rupert Murdoch also owns Fox News. Can't really trust them. And you wonder why they supported the repeal of net neutrality. It doesn't have anything to do with the massive profits for Verizon, AT&T, and Comcast, would it? Just saying. So, now, thanks to these conspiracy theories by crazy right-wingers, the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee called Wheeler to discuss the SEC's relationship with the White House. Now, here you had Republican Representative Jason Chaffetz saying that Obama's statement had, quote, caused Wheeler to radically alter course, and he asked Wheeler if the FCC had any secret meetings with the White House, and demanded that the FCC's Inspector General, the nonpartisan guy, to investigate. Chaffetz had said, quote, I think there's enough smoke here that it's really worth looking at. And also, I'm assuming, probably added, where there's smoke, there's fire, because President Obama is the Antichrist. He's also the devil. So, there must be fire. Okay. Hey, man, look, that's what some of them believe. I know, they're insane. But this is the insanity of the right wing. So, again, the Inspector General, thanks to the Wall Street Journal, thanks to all these right-wing conspiracy theories, looks into this, and here's what they found. After reviewing more than 600,000 emails, oh my God, the emails, the independent office found that there was, quote, no collusion between the White House and the FCC. Quote, we found no evidence of secret deals, promises, or threats from anyone outside the commission, nor any evidence of any improper use of power to influence the FCC decision-making process. Oops. So what's funny about this is that this was not released before the vote. They actually held on to this until, or they've held on to this report, this memo, since August of 2016. So this memo that disproves the entire conservative narrative about net neutrality was basically buried, not released. But that's not all. The Inspector General's report also notes that the record it reviewed did not support the analysis in a separate Senate probe titled, quote, Regulating the Internet, How the White House Bowled Over FCC Independence. Basically claiming that, no, the FCC was following the edicts of the White House through some sort of weird collusion. But nothing happened. There was no collusion. And yet here they are claiming, no, the only reason we had net neutrality is because Obama strong-armed us into keeping everything equal. It's amazing, right? So now they found Nothing we found refuted the actual findings in the Senate staff report, the IG wrote. More importantly, nothing we found in the complete unredacted record evidenced any undue influence that would have militated in favor of a more comprehensive investigation. So basically, I guess when the OIG report didn't show what they wanted, they decided to ignore it. But also the OIG also sat on it. And it took a FOIA request to get to the truth. And what is the truth? Quote, nothing in these or any other emails appeared to indicate that there was pressure to delay the order from the December meeting from any source other than concerned FCC staffers, adding that there was no indication that a draft of the net neutrality regulations had been circulated improperly. That means no collusion, no plot, no plan to take over the internet with regulations, nothing. It's insanity. President Obama did not take away the rights to the free and fair internet. If anything, Ajit Pai just did. All he did was ensure that the internet stayed the same. That all content, including massively right-wing content like the Wall Street Journal and all other websites, be treated the same. This is an idea. This isn't an idea to take over the internet, right? This is not a Marxist plot. Net neutrality is something that a majority of the Americans actually agree with, including Republicans. Remember, the first net neutrality rules were actually put in place under George W. Bush. And there were a lot of Republicans that worked on these 2015 rules that ended up getting dismantled by Ajit Pai. But you had this bullshit false narrative that was successfully used by these big corporations to convince a bunch of people that it was in their best interest to hand over the internet to those same large corporations who are going to massively benefit from the removal of these rules. If you're in the camp of removing net neutrality is such a fantastic thing, well, let me ask you, probably in a couple years, when they really start putting the screws to us financially, are you winning yet? Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.